Good afternoon, everyone. This is another Viva vlogging on location because I yet again have all three kids, and this is yet again the quietest spot I could find in the house. Not in a cornfield today. Today we're in front of a pile of dirt, which is a very fitting analogy because today we're talking about the government. Specifically, when does a private company become a state actor that is bound by constitutional requirements that otherwise impact governmental entities? Now, this question has been coming up a lot in the context of big tech censorship with respect to YouTube, Google, Twitter, censoring free speech, and people are saying they can't censor free speech, it's unconstitutional, and people don't fully appreciate that these are private actors, not governmental entities that are not bound by constitutional requirements. And this is an issue that we have been trying to deal with and resolve over the last several years, or at least anybody who has ever experienced this censorship firsthand. And this censorship takes on both hard and soft formats. You have your hard censorship where they just remove you from the platform. They delete your tweets if they don't like them under the guise of their nebulous rules and terms of service. And then you have your soft censorship, specifically on YouTube, where they demonetize content that they deem to be not advertiser friendly, which is sort of a soft deterrent for anybody to cover those subjects, because if you can't monetize your videos, it is something of an incentive or a deterrent to cover certain subject matter. And over the last few years, a bunch of people have been trying to find a solution to the problem by filing a bunch of lawsuits, which themselves have been getting dismissed because ultimately the courts are just coming to the conclusion that the Constitution does not apply to these big tech private enterprises. And for those of you who have been around my channel for long enough, you know that Robert Barnes and I talk about this frequently during our Sunday night live streams. I have covered a bunch of the lawsuits that deal with this issue. Most recently was Trump's lawsuit against Twitter, wherein Trump is now raising the argument that Twitter has become a state actor. I covered that lawsuit, and much to the displeasure of some of my subscribers or some of the people commenting in the comment section, some people did not like my analysis of that lawsuit because I am not optimistic that that lawsuit is going to succeed, especially in light of the lawsuit filed by Robert F. Kennedy, the Children's Defense Fund. I forget what it's called. The Children's Health Defense that was filed against Facebook, where Robert F. Kennedy was raising this exact argument, and his lawsuit was tossed at the lower levels to be determined, to be seen what happens at the higher levels. But Donald Trump's lawsuit against Twitter was even weaker than Robert F. Kennedy's lawsuit against Facebook. Donald Trump's lawsuit against Twitter contained very vague, very superficial allegations that could render Twitter a state actor. It referenced certain tweets coming from politicians saying that Donald Trump shouldn't be allowed to have a Twitter account. It referenced other comments made by President Biden and Kamala Harris to the effect that certain big tech monopolies should be stripped of their Section 230 Communications Decency Act immunities if they don't comply with certain requirements. And Donald Trump is trying to extrapolate from that Twitter therefore has become a state actor in the manner in which they are dealing with people and are therefore subject to constitutional requirements. Not the best argument for the reasons I mentioned in that vlog, but lo and behold, the other day, Press Secretary Jen Psaki said something which should cause some people's alarm bells to go off. Jen Psaki, in no uncertain terms, detailed how the government is working with, and I might even say controlling, Facebook for the purposes of controlling certain messaging coming out of Facebook as relates to COVID. And as relates to how the government is dealing with alleged misinformation on Facebook, Jen Psaki said that the government was flagging posts, flagging alleged misinformation posts for Facebook, not on Facebook. Now, if you haven't actually seen that sound clip, I'm going to play it for you right now, and you let me know what you think.
With these social media platforms, and those engagements typically happen through members of our senior staff, but also members of our COVID-19 team. Given, as Dr. Murthy conveyed, this is a big issue of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic. In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation. We're working with doctors and medical professionals to connect to connected medical experts who are popular with their audiences with accurate information and boost trusted content. So we're helping get trusted content out there. We also created the COVID Community Corps to get factual information into the hands of local messengers. And we're also investing, as you all have seen, in the president's, the vice president's, and Dr. Fauci's time in meeting with...
And there you have it. Now, this seems to be a potentially very problematic admission that Jen Psaki just made very loudly to the entire world, and you'll have some apologists in the comment section saying, look, no big deal. Anybody can flag a post on Facebook. It's not a specific government rule, yada, yada, yada. There is a very big difference between flagging a post on Twitter and flagging a post for Twitter. And I'm not saying this to be pedantic, and I'm not actually sure what pedantic even means. I'm not playing with semantics. There is a very, very big material difference between flagging a post on a platform and flagging a post for that platform. Specifically in the context of Jen Psaki's other statements as to how the government is working with Facebook, it is quite clear that this is not just a third party using the platform the way the platform was intended to be used, flagging posts that they think is harassment, misinformation, whatever. It is quite clear that the federal government is working with Facebook and almost compelling certain action from Facebook. It could even be argued that to some extent the federal government seems to be nationalizing certain functions on Facebook. And so immediately after having heard that soundbite, I took to Twitter to say what I think is an undumb thing, and I posted the following tweet. Quote, "We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook," end quote. There is a material difference between flagging a post on Facebook versus flagging a post for Facebook. The former implies open participation on a platform, the latter implies state actor control over that platform. At PressSec. What Jen Psaki just admitted to in that press conference to the entire world comes awfully close to what I respectfully submit is a state actor function at Facebook. If her admission is accurate, Facebook is no longer just some private enterprise carrying on its business as per its own terms of service. They are now responding to and acting at the behest of the federal government. And to me, that raises, if not a very strong, at the very least a stronger argument that Facebook has in fact become a state actor with respect to some of its conduct. Now, the question of when a private entity becomes a state actor has been adjudicated by the Supreme Court of the United States, and they issued what is known as the Edmonston-Lugar test, and that is the test to determine when a private entity becomes a state actor. Now, it is a very high threshold to meet, and it refers to something known as the public function rule. Basically, that private entity needs to be exercising what would otherwise be a public function exclusively reserved to the government. If the private entity is not exercising a public function that would otherwise be reserved exclusively for the government, they will not be regarded as a state actor. This was the case in one lawsuit where a utilities company shut off the utilities to somebody, and they then claimed that the utilities company violated their constitutional rights, and the court came to the conclusion that providing utilities is not exclusively a government function, therefore that utilities company would not be deemed to be a state actor for the purposes of that lawsuit. A case in which they recognized that the private entity was in fact a state actor was when the private enterprise was carrying on elections for a private political party, and they determined that carrying on elections is a public function. It is exclusively reserved to the government, and therefore that private entity was in fact a state actor in that lawsuit. I don't know if anybody just noticed that fly land on my nose, but that is extremely irritating. But above and beyond the public function, the court has recognized other circumstances in which a private entity can be deemed to be a state actor, and that involves circumstances where, for example, the state is compelling certain conduct from that private entity. That is known as compulsion or coercive power, and basically if the state is requiring the private entity to do certain things, well then the Constitution should apply to those specific actions of that private enterprise. You also, under certain circumstances, have the criteria of joint action, entanglement, or pervasive entwinement, basically when the government is so fundamentally intertwined with the private entity that the private entity is basically a government entity. And here, listening to Jen Psaki talk about the work that the federal government is doing for and on behalf of Facebook, it almost sounds like the federal government has taken over a certain function of Facebook, and I think that raises a very, very good argument to argue that Facebook is now a government actor, if only for certain purposes. To be seen where this goes, I know a lot of other people are having the same reflexes, the same thoughts, and the same discussion on social media, but I do think this is going to go places because I think what Jen Psaki just admitted to the world is a very, very big admission. To me and to a great many other people, it really seems that Facebook is now no longer a private entity. They are an extension of the government. They are the mouthpiece of the government. They are effectively just another branch of the government. And that should terrify absolutely every single person out there, regardless of your political affiliation, because when big tech teams up with big government, there's absolutely no hope for the little people. We will all be at the mercy of big tech censorship working with big government to control literally what the people hear and see. All right, and with that said and done, I had better go in the house because I put my kids on a 30-minute show, and I think I am right at the end of that episode. If you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below, yada, yada, yada. Robert Barnes and I do weekly live streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams with a guest every Wednesday called The Sidebar. We are also on Locals. If anybody wants to find us there, it is vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I'm also on Rumble. More important than anything, take care of yourselves, check in friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace.